name is Sierra Grandy. I am a business owner, I suppose. I take the Minnesota bar exam in 2 weeks, so hopefully in a couple months I'll also be an attorney. But that's who I am.
What inspired you to become an advocate?
My own mental health journey. So I've been in the mental health advocacy field and doing things since 2019. And previous to that, I was just undergoing my own mental health journey, all those ups and downs. And as I started to get more and more into it, I fell in love with the community and fell in love with just the people. And so then I started taking on leadership roles. So now I'm on a couple different committees, one for the state of Minnesota and one for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, which I'll end up mentioning a ton during this.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about your own mental health journey?
Absolutely. So this is a long story, so I'll pare it down as much as I possibly can for this. But my mental health journey started when I was 11. It was the first time I had a life-threatening thought for myself. And because when I was 11, I was told, like, if you were ever in danger, you should call 911. So I did. And I called the police on myself because I didn't want to be around anymore. And from there, I was put in a mental hospital, and it just kind of set off this chain of events that lasted throughout up until my early 20s. I was in and out of hospitals throughout most of my childhood, medications, different diagnoses. At 14, I was put in a residential treatment center, and that was an experience. They were trying to keep me alive, and they did the best they could, and they succeeded, so I give them that. But it was rough. I was dealing with life-threatening depression and severe anxiety, and then a bunch of different diagnoses were being thrown around. Borderline personality disorder, bipolar, things that now wouldn't really make sense to be labeling a kid with, but back then it just was happening. By the time I was 18, I ended up going through electroconvulsive therapy, and I lost a year of my memory due to that. And then then I ended up going to 3 different undergraduate universities, dropped out of 2 of them because of health-related things, because I also live with chronic pain. So I'm trying, I balance this kind of my mental health, and then I also balance my physical health, and then I also I'm living with autism and ADHD, but I didn't know about those until after I got into mental health recovery. So I'd been active in the field for a while, and I wanted to get active in the field because I got into recovery, and I did that in part because of ketamine infusions, which I think is an interesting way of doing that, and then a bunch of lifestyle things, which we'll cover. But started doing like NAMI support groups and such. But then I went to law school, and after I went to law school, I recognized that a lot of the things I was dealing with in high school they weren't just depression and anxiety. Like, that social difficultiness came back in like no small way. I developed an eating disorder in law school, binge eating disorder, and so we were just trying to figure out how to take care of some of these things. And because of the binge eating disorder, one of the medications to support that is a stimulant that also treats ADHD. And in order to stay on the medication, because it was working really well, I had to go do an extensive psychoevaluation, which is one I haven't had it had been a long time. And then I got the diagnosis of autism and ADHD. But I continued doing my work in the mental health field because mental health will always be kind of like my go-to, because I know that a lot of places split these up. I prefer to just throw everything together into Neurodivergent at this point. But most of the treatments that work for me are mental health treatments, because a lot of the neurodevelopmental disorder treatments, specifically for autism, don't really cut it. So typically I'm just treating the mental health side of things. And that's what was life-threatening. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. And you do share your story as a public speaker. What is it like being a public speaker?
It's a wild ride. I've been doing public speaking stuff since 2020. It is my favorite thing. I think getting up on stage, sharing my story, sharing like things I've researched, and just giving information is my favorite thing. It's hard. There's always this like vulnerability hangover afterwards, where I go up on stage, I talk about having like being hospitalized a ton, going through shock therapy, electroconvulsive therapy while I was still in high school, dealing with amnesia, learning about how just unreliable like everyone is as narrators in our own head because of our memories. And because of that, I just found this like helpful. And so from there, I started talking to groups through NAMI, through their Inner Own Voice program, where they helped kind of empower me to share my story in a way that could help others and talk about what happened, but then also talk about what helps and how there is like recovery is a journey and not a destination. And I started seeing over and over again how my story was being used and then internalized by others when I was speaking, and something kind of shifted in certain people, and I could see it and feel it, which is sounds very silly, but it's the best experience there is out there. Helping people recognize that their loved ones with mental health disorders, like they're not going to be pulled out of that cave. Rather, you need to go in there and sit with them and understand that like this isn't an easy process for anyone, but they need your support even if they don't look like what you want them to look like, and things like that. And then I started getting into the academic side of things. So I started presenting, got my psychology degree with an economics undergrad or minor, after I got into recovery. And then, as I said, the whole law school thing. And so now I get to use all of my research skills to create these incredibly, I find them really fun, but I also really try to make them useful and relevant presentations for, I've spoken to so many different places at this point, crisis intervention trainings, conferences. NAMI flew me down to Denver to go speak at NAMICon this year. A lot of online remote things, like just it's lovely. And I am actually going to be going even further and doing it full time after I take the bar. So I will be doing inclusion and neurodivergent, neurodiversity presentations and trainings and speaking and advocacy as my full-time job after I graduate.
And while I was doing my research, I went to your website, and it talks a lot about Questify your life. What is that?
Thank you for asking, because public speaking is my favorite thing to do. Talking about Questify your life is my favorite thing to talk about. And so there's several different parts here. So Questify your life is the system I use to get things done. It is a gamification and positive psychology tool that I've kind of like in all of my years of therapy, because like that's where I started, right? Like in hospitals, people were trying to teach me all these skills. And so I was undergoing CBT and DBT and all these different things. And then I started to do my own work after I started to be able to make some progress with other like health related lifestyle skills. But I deal with a lot of executive function issues. Now I know it's because of ADHD, but before it was just, if something wasn't fun or interesting or urgent, it was just not going to happen for me. And that was a difficult thing to deal with. So I was trying to find a way to get that done. And I love games. I love the structure of games. I love that there is a pattern to games. And I like the story of games. And from there, I took kind of like the gamification part of it. So you have levels, you have quests, you have your character building, your journey, and I started to use that in more of a quest-based system that I can build out like everything in my life, and I use it in everything in my life, which is why you can see it on my website. It's kind of my business and who I am at this point is really split into like my personal brand, I guess, if
Yeah.
you're thinking of it that way. There's two different buckets. I have one bucket, which is my public speaking. We're talking about neurodiversity, very like neurodivergent thought leader. And that is what I call my dragon within the wider scope of my Questify Your Life thing, which is the other half of my business. And the dragon, for context, because that would make very little sense if I don't explain it, within the Questify Your Life system, a dragon is a social cause that is overwhelming if you go at it alone. And there's a ton of them. And there are things that are actively hurting us that end up feeling so overwhelming that you just want to give up. It's like you keep getting burned again and again and again. Mental health crisis, environment, politics, like there's a ton of them. And I found myself in this situation where I kept being like, I want to fight every dragon all at once. And then I'd get overwhelmed, and then I'd get burnt out, and then I'd get depressed. And then I have a life, like my mental health can dive into a really negative space if I end up there because I can't do anything about it until I started going at it like a dragon. So then I started creating like this system where I have my specific dragon, which is neurodiversity and mental wellness, and I'm a leader in that. And then I support others in their fight for their dragons, but I know what mine is, so I can take extra steps, and I can find my team, and I can go on that adventure, and I can make a difference, and I can help people who may have been hurt by that dragon. So that is part of Questify Your Life. It's in 4 parts. It's quest, journey, character, and dragons, and then from there, it's who I am.
For me, I live with bipolar disorder too, and the thing that helps me the most is just hearing about other people going through similar experiences and succeeding. How does it feel for you to help others with your mission?
Fantastic, and also difficult. So there's a bit of survivor's guilt, to be honest, because I've got lucky. I am lucky. I have had a decent amount of privilege. I did grow up in a low income, like I have a low income background, and so I try, like I pull that in and like I use it, because at this point, I mean, I'm still kind of living paycheck to paycheck, but my point of all of this is being able to give back, even like. It's why I decided not to go into law full time after taking the bar. Like, I want to be able to continuously give back because I've been able to find a place where I can feel joy again. I can build, I can thrive, I can dream, and I know what it is like not to be able to do those things because my mental health and my circumstances were just so hard that I just couldn't get there. And now I have the opportunity to share resources and share hope and share stories and share tactics and like little things for people. Because I'm not going to be able to fix much, but little by little, I am hoping that I can help people try more and do more. The whole Questify Your Life thing is all based on like a lot of gamified language, and one of those things is from D&D, and it's like rolling the dice. I end up like rolling a lot of dice when it comes to like making decisions, but I also think of it when I am helping people and I'm doing things, is the more I roll the dice, the more likely I'll get rejected, but the more likely I will also be to be helpful and have opportunities and meet people and do things. So I try really hard to be able to roll the dice and like get out there and do as much as I can as much as possible.